Dr. Vijay Kelkar to present a bouquet and memento to our Honorable Chief Guest, Shri Ajit Seth. I now request Shri Anand Lime to present a bouquet to Chairman Shri S.S. Kshatriya. I once again request Shri Anand Lime to present a bouquet to Dr. Bhagwan Sahai. Thank you everyone. To proceed with the program, I invite Shri Lime, Director General, Yashada, to deliver the welcome address and inform us about the concept of Shri B.G. Deshmukh Memorial Lecture Series. Please put your hands together for Shri Lime.
Namaskar and welcome to Yashada on the occasion of the 4th lecture in memory of Honorable Shri B.G. Deshmukh. Today's chief guest and speaker for the 4th memorial lecture, Honorable Shri Ajit Seth, the chairman of this session and also President of the Board of Governors of Yashada, Honorable Shri Swadhin Kshatriya, the member of the Board of Governors of Yashada, Dr. Bhagwan Sahai, the co-host of the 4th memorial lecture and Chairman Janwani, Honorable Dr. Vijay Kelkar, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome everyone here this evening on behalf of Yashada, Janwani and on behalf of the Government of Maharashtra to the 4th B.G. Deshmukh Memorial Lecture. This is part of the lecture series being jointly organized by Yashada in collaboration with Janwani. For us at Yashada, this occasion is an opportunity to renew our gratitude and pay our tribute to Shri B.G. Deshmukh, our founder, chairman and president of the Academy. This memorial lecture series has been instituted to commemorate his vision and contribution in the establishment of Yashada and in strengthening various other institutions. Similarly, Shri B.G. Deshmukh was also the founder chairman of Janwani, our co-hosts. Yashada and Janwani, as part of the joint commitment, have organized this 4th lecture. It is organized on the occasion of and proximate to 26th March, which is the birthday of Shri B.G. Deshmukh. To enumerate some details about the earlier lectures, sir, Dr. Veerappa Moili was a chief guest and speaker for the first memorial lecture. As the then Union Cabinet Minister, he spoke on challenges of governance. Dr. C. Rangarajan, Chairman, Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, spoke on growth, development and governance as the chief guest and speaker for the 2nd memorial lecture. Shri Wajahat Habibullah, the Chief Information Commissioner of India, was a chief guest and speaker for the 3rd memorial lecture on that is last year. He spoke on governance in India, challenge and response, RTI perspective. And now we are welcoming Sir for the 4th lecture in this series. To introduce you very briefly about Yashada, where all of us have assembled here today. We began as the Administrative Staff College in 1963 in Mumbai as a result of the vision of Shri Yashwantrao Chauhan, the first Chief Minister of a newly born Maharashtra. In 1983, 20 years later, we journeyed here with land received from the Raj Bhavan at Pune. And then we were known as Maharashtra Institute of Development Administration, MIDA, as it was popularly known. In 1990, in an initiative to pay tribute to the vision of the first Chief Minister of Maharashtra, we evolved as the Yashwantrao Chauhan Academy of Development Administration, or Yashada, as we are now known. The word Yashada is not an abbreviation, but it is a single word, acronym to rededicate ourselves to aspire to better heights with the light of knowledge. Honorable Dr. Vijay Kelkar will introduce you to Janavani, but suffice it to say that apart from the fact that Shri B.G. Deshmukh is our common founder chairman, both the institutions are committed to address the issues of growth and development. In his commitment to this area of good governance, transparency and responsiveness, Shri B.G. Deshmukh had always encouraged Yashada to present training, research and documentation initiatives in a very independent manner. On this occasion, we in Yashada renew our resolve to provide honest and true capacity building initiatives. I am very grateful to our chief guest, Honorable Shri Ajit Seth, the Cabinet Secretary to the Government of India, for having accepted our joint invitation and agreeing to deliver this fourth memorial lecture on governance in times of change. And I once again welcome him to Yashada. I am also grateful to Honorable Shri Swadhin Kshatriya, Chief Secretary to the Government of Maharashtra, for his presence to give us his encouragement and support as always. And of course, I welcome you all present here and thank you for continuing your association with the Academy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for putting today's lecture series in this context. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very fortunate to have amongst us Shri Ajit Nimbarkar, former Chief Secretary, Government of Maharashtra, who had the privilege to work with late Shri B.G. Deshmukh and witness his great leadership in administration. Let us invite Shri Ajit Nimbarkar to share with us his memories about Shri B.G. Deshmukh and his contributions to the state and nation. Thank you.
Honorable Cabinet Secretary and friends, Shri B.G. Deshmukh passed away in August 2011, and as was just said, this is in honor of his memory. This is the fourth lecture that we are, Yashada and Janvani is holding. I'm sure by now all of you know about Shri Deshmukh, but I see some young faces in the benches at the last time, and for their benefit, at the cost of repetition also, I will go through some of the important achievements of Shri Deshmukh. I had the good fortune to work under him both at the state level as well as at the central level, and I observed closely his working after retirement also. Now most of us know about Shri Deshmukh as an ex-cabinet secretary. He was an able administrator, definitely. But there are other aspects also which need to be highlighted. Apart from that, he worked in the private sector also and distinguished himself in that. He wrote several books, and after retirement, particularly, he played the role of an activist and the founder chairman of several NGOs and public bodies. I'll touch briefly on each one of them. But in all this aspect, the important thread was good governance. He was passionately involved in development and good governance. And for that purpose, whether he wrote, whether it was books, or it was working in the public sector or private sector, the main thread was good governance. Shri Deshmukh had his original education in Pune, schooling, college, etc. was in Pune. And he belonged to the first batch of direct recruits of IS, 1951. So after independence, when ICS was no more. The question was, who is going to administer India, the civil service? Many had doubts whether the newly founded Indian Administrative Service will be an equal match to the ICS. And Shri Deshmukh and his colleagues of the ranks set the pace and distinguished themselves in their very career. He was first allotted to the Bombay state as it was then, and then later on came to, when Maharashtra was carved out, he came to Maharashtra. In the state itself, he had very important posts. He was Principal Secretary to the Chief Minister, Shri Naik at that time. The first secretary level. Earlier, the secretaries to the Chief Minister used to be of Deputy Secretary level. He was the first person who came at the high post position. Then later on, he became Municipal Commissioner Mumbai and moved to Government of India in the Home Ministry, and later on he was Secretary Labour for 4 years. He distinguished himself in the labour field considerably. He was chairman of the governing body of the ILO in his last year as Labour Secretary. After that, Maharashtra called him back. He came back to Maharashtra as Chief Secretary. And one would have thought that normally he would retire as the Chief Secretary. But Sri Rajiv Gandhi, after he took over as the Prime Minister, recalled him and made him Cabinet Secretary. This itself was a departure from the normal trend. As Mr. Saif would know, Cabinet Secretaries generally are picked up from the Secretaries to Government of India. Mr. Deshmukh, from Secretary to Government of India, had gone back to the state. This was a very rare instance when he was called back from the state and took over as the Cabinet Secretary. And even after Cabinet Secretary, so much was the confidence in him that Mr. Rajiv Gandhi took him as Secretary to Prime Minister after his retirement. He not only continued with Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, but he continued even after Mr. Rajiv Gandhi left. He was Secretary to Prime Minister with Mr. VP Singh, and then later on with Mr. Chandrasekhar also for a short spell. After that, after retirement, he came into the private sector. He was, and then again he played a very important role. He was a full-time director of Tata Sons. He was also chairman of Tata Institute, of the governing body of the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. And he was on several boards. He was chairman of Cipolex, he was independent director of Finolex, and several other companies in both Bombay and Pune. He wrote books also on his past work. One of the famous books was a Cabinet Secretary Looks Back. Then there was a book on Cabinet Secretary Thinks Aloud, a Cabinet Secretary Looks Around, Pune to Prime Minister's Office, etc. He used to write several articles also on that. After he had finished his innings in the government, private sector, and he was writing books, he devoted himself again to the cause of good governance and activating the citizens in this process. First, the work was in Mumbai, later on he shifted to Pune. In Mumbai, he was with certain organizations also, like he was president of the Asiatic Society, he was chairman of the Bombay Natural History Society, he was a member of the Bombay First, he was on the Mohalla Committee, Movement Trust, Prince of Wales Museum, etc. But he was also founder chairman of certain active NGOs like Agni, Praja, and PCGT, Public Concern for Good Governance, both at Mumbai and at Pune. He not only got the citizens to come on these organizations and work for good governance, but he also took a leading part in certain agitations for this cause. One of the important cases was in 2003, there was a bomb blast in Ghatkopar in Mumbai. And the opposition parties called for Mumbai Ban, rail roko and road roko, etc. to bring entire life to a standstill. The inconvenience to the common citizens in a big way. And Mr. Deshmukh, along with some other members, filed a PI in 2003 itself on that. This bond was on 30 July 2003, and he filed a PI saying that this has caused so much inconvenience to the ordinary citizens. And the High Court passed a judgment saying that this was unconstitutional, the bond was unconstitutional, and the concerned political parties were fined 20 lakhs each at that time. This was a major landmark, because after that, political parties have been very careful about getting involved in organizing bunds, etc. Mr. Deshmukh not only led a selfless life, but towards several causes, but he also overcame several tragedies in his personal life. He lost his wife early. His only daughter, before she completed 20, passed away when he was secretary to the Prime Minister. He was in Pune at that time. But in spite of these tragedies, he kept his calm and he kept on working towards causes that are very dear to him. He also led by personal example. He made personal contributions to causes which were dear to him. Several organizations are personal witness to that. He gave money generously. One important case only I would like to cite, and Mr. Kshatriya is here, so he would bear testimony to that. We have the Indian Institute of Public Administration, Maharashtra. Mr. Kshatriya was then the General Secretary. And Mr. Deshmukh spoke with him and said, I want to make a contribution. We thought it would be normally a few thousand rupees. And he was surprised. A check of 10 lakhs was given to Mr. Kshatriya. No preconditions, no hula about it, no noise, nothing. That was his way of working. He always laid stress on the citizen first and good governance. I think he was a role model to all of us, both in service and outside. And I'm sure his life will inspire all the younger generation to accordingly work towards that cause. These lectures are organized in his memory and in the cause that he devoted himself to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for throwing light on life of late Shri B.G. Deshmukh and making us all familiar with his aura and remarkable career span. I now request Honorable Chairman Shri S.S. Kshatriya to deliver his observations and comments.
The Honorable Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Vijay Kilkar, my colleague Bhagwan Sai, the Director General of Yashada, former Chief Secretary Shri Ajit Nimbarkar, all my colleagues from the government, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I have nothing more to add than what Mr. Ajit Nimbarkar has already narrated. But let me begin with the incident which he incited at the last. I was the then Honorary Secretary of the Indian Institute of Public Administration, Maharashtra branch, when I got a call from late Mr. B.G. Deshmukh, and he asked me for the postal address where he can send me something. So I said, yes sir, but what is it that you would like to send? He said, "Me tula check pathato." So I could not understand the reference to context of it. Then I said, sir, but what would be the purpose? So he said, I'm going to make a contribution towards the Indian Institute of Public Administration, Maharashtra branch. And after a few days, when I got the envelope and I opened it, and I found that the figure was 10 lakhs, I actually thought that there must have been some mistake. म्हणून मी साहेबांना परत फोन केला. I said, sir, thank you very much. I received your check and all. I didn't know how to tell him. Sir, you read it, right? I said, yeah, what is the problem? I said, sir, the amount is 10 lakhs of rupees. He said, yeah, I've given you 10 lakhs of rupees. you must see that the Indian Institute of Public Administration branch of our state survives and continues its work in future also. That was the kind of dedication he had towards public service. I have in my strong way, I'm very happy that Yashada and Janvani have come together to perpetuate, to cherish the memory of a legendary civil servant from our state, from our country, I would say. But yes, I have also started, after he left us, the Deshmukh Memorial Essay Competition, which we hold every year. And we have kept this money in a corpus, and out of the interest, we are doing this. We also have the Deshmukh Memorial Lecture in Mumbai. The last lecture was by Mr. Ribeiro, who's the famous police officer, IPS officer, who worked with him and were very good friends with him. The first memory I have of Mr. Deshmukh is 1986, or around that time, when he came back to the state and took over as the Chief Secretary. So I was in Ahmednagar there, those days I was the CEO Zilla Parishad. So he came to Ahmednagar in connection with some army program. So he asked me, how long you have been here? So I said, sir, 3 years. I said, with great emphasis, thinking I'll then get transferred or something. So he said, oh, 3 years, that's a long time, isn't it? I said, yes, it's a long time. And then after he left, I kept on hoping that I'll get a transfer on it. It didn't happen. He came back, I think, after 7-8 months. That time he was passing through Ahmednagar and going to Aurangabad. So I called on him, I received him at the circuit house. He said, oh, you are still here? I said, yes, sir. Waiting for the order. So that's how he was. He said, no, I'm going to make a note of it. But then the transfer order did come, but it was not in the direction of Mumbai, it was in the direction of Andhra Pradesh, and I landed up as a collector of Nanded district. So that was Mr. Deshmukh's first encounter. He was very supportive of officers whom he thought were trying to do some good public administration. Very encouraging, very supportive, very simple. His humility, his simplicity is something which I always remember and cherish. I also found in him, perhaps I think I may be right or wrong, that it was his simple childhood that he spent. And I was trying to find out where he spent his childhood. Most of you are from Pune, so you'll be happy to know that he spent most of his childhood in Narayanpet, in a place called Munzaba Lane. I don't know whether it is still, his family house is there. And he studied in the NMV High School, and then joined the Ferguson College. And he did his BSc with zoology honors and botany as a subsidiary subject. And then wrote this, but did MSc for 1 year because he was underage. He couldn't write the IAS exam because the minimum age was not there. So he did MSc for 1 year and wrote the exams and got selected. But I would like to quote one sentence which he wrote from one of his autobiography. He says, I was the first person to get into the IAS through competitive exams from Bombay State, as it was called that time, and became a bit of a curiosity in Ferguson College, as everyone wanted to know who I was. But the rest of Pune ignored me, that's his, I'm quoting him, as my family did not belong to the elite class. That is what he writes, quote unquote. Probably that was the reason why his simplicity and humility continued throughout his life. The other feature which I think must have been a great quality in him was his absolute impartiality, neutrality, which are expected to be the hallmarks of a civil servant. It is very interesting to know, in his memoirs he writes, that he was actually first a secretary to late Shri Vasant Party, and there was a change. And then Mr. Shankarrao Chavan became the chief minister. Now all of you are from Maharashtra. I do not have to tell you the difference of style of working between Vasant Dada and Mr. Shankarrao Chavan. So Mr. B.G. Deshmukh writes that I told Mr. Shankarrao Chavan that if you have any hesitation in continuing me as a secretary, please change me. But those days were also very different. And Mr. Shankarrao Chauhan told Mr. Vijay Deshmukh, you were not a secretary to Mr. Vasant Dada Patil, you were a secretary to the Chief Minister of Maharashtra. And you will continue to be a secretary to the Chief Minister of Maharashtra. It doesn't matter Mr. Vasant Dada Patil or Mr. Shankarrao Chauhan. So those were the traditions that he cherished. And that is how, when he went to Delhi, and Mr. Nimbarkar was describing that after becoming Principal Secretary to Prime Minister, he survived changes and he served as a Principal Secretary to Prime Minister, 3 Prime Ministers of different political parties, of different ideologies, different approaches. And he was with the late Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, then I think he was with Mr. V.P. Singh, correct, and then with Mr. Chandrasekhar. So if a person could survive all changes and still be regarded with respect as a bureaucrat, that shows the kind of dedication, devotion, impartiality and fairness that he must have looked into. I would not take more time because we are all very keen to listen to the keynote address of the Honorable Cabinet Secretary, and I'm sure that the Yashada Janavani will continue this tradition of holding the B.G. Deshmukh Memorial Lecture every year, and so shall the Indian Institute of Public Administration at Mumbai also. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I now request Dr. Vijay Kekar, Chairman Janvani, to please introduce the guest speaker for today's program, Shri Ajit Kumar Seth.
Ajit Kumar Seth, the distinguished Cabinet Secretary of India, Dr. Sahai, Adelaide Chief Secretary of Maharashtra, Dr. Limay, the Director General of Yashada, distinguished guests and friends. It is my indeed honor and privilege to introduce our speaker this evening. Shri Ajit Kumar Seth is currently serving as Cabinet Secretary, which I'm sure all of you know that is a fulcrum around which the entire governance of India revolves. And he became Cabinet Secretary after a distinguished career in Uttar Pradesh, Government of Uttar Pradesh and the Government of India. And also serving India in different ministries, including Commerce Ministry, where we were colleagues. And in fact, we were together in Geneva when I was in Geneva and he was in our government representative, defending India's interest, commercial interest in international affairs. He has a distinguished academic career. He did his bachelor's from prestigious St. Stephen's College, Delhi, in chemistry, and after obtaining his Master of Philosophy Life Sciences in JNU, another great university of Delhi, he went also to UK to work on Masters in Development issues. And he's in the mold of Shri Deshmukh. He is known in service as a man of great integrity and fairness. And it is really our luck that he has agreed to speak this evening on and participate in our 4th Deshmukh lecture this evening. Before I pass on, I thought I'll just introduce briefly the Janamani, the institution which I currently have the privilege to chair. It was founded by Dr. B. Deshmukh. Essentially, is aimed to improve quality of life of Pune. And as was mentioned by Ajit, that throughout his life, even after retirement, he was continuously contributing to how to improve the fellow citizens' life. And he was, I didn't know till I met him, that he was also Municipal Commissioner in Mumbai, and In fact, he was a great student of urban economics and urbanization, and he had great deep interest, and he contributed in our thinking of Janavani. And I hope that we can be able to sort of continue his great tradition and contribute to his vision of to Pune as a great city. So without much ado, I will invite our distinguished speaker to give his lecture.
Mr. Nimbalkar, Mr. Pandit, Mr. Mathur, Dr. Saurabh, Mr. Anand Limay, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to be with you this evening. I deem it an honor to have been invited to deliver this address in the memory of Shri B.G. Deshmukh. I had the privilege to meet with Shri Deshmukh only once, and that was in 1985 when I was with the permanent mission to the United Nations in Geneva, and that's where I met him. I pay my tribute to Shri Deshmukh. He was obviously a very multi-faceted personality, a distinguished administrator and a builder of institutions. And as we just heard from Shri Nimbalkar and from Mr. Kshatriya, he had varied interests, and in a remarkable career he made significant contributions towards the strengthening of our administrative system. The memoirs to which a reference was made, where he looks back and looks around and thinks aloud as Cabinet Secretary, indeed they record very perceptive and insightful observations on the functioning of government. It is fashionable these days to talk about India's ranking in the ease of doing business. And, we are all engaged in some form or the other in trying to see that we don't, graze the bottom of the list, and we rise up of that ladder. But by all accounts, obviously, Mr. Deshmukh was more concerned about the ease of living and not just the ease of doing business, and which is something that I think we should really cherish. I feel the richer for having been invited to speak here today in his memory, and being with you all and hearing about him and getting to know more about him. I really feel that I would have missed something if I had not come. When Dr. Kelkar spoke to me and he requested me to come, I hold him in such respect and awe that I had no other choice but to say yes immediately. And now I feel really nice that I'm here. Allow me to first outline why I have chosen to speak on governance in times of change. Now, I needn't add that my observations here are, of course, personal. The change is in the air. Not only are changes sweeping through the world, and they are sweeping through India particularly, but third generation after independence is coming into its own in India. Children of a new mobile technology, they represent the face of new India. And the youth are joining the workforce in ever greater numbers. There's a transition from agriculture to manufacturing and to service, from unorganized to the organized workforce, and also from traditional skills to occupations based on knowledge and training. Now, there have been so many other transformations and changes, whether they be in changes in the usage of fertilizers or cropping patterns, or people migrating from rural areas for work to towns. Urbanization has been going on apace, so much so that in a few years' time I think it will be inaccurate to claim that India lives in the villages. Now, following this particularly strong economic growth that we have had in the last 2 decades, the country's economy is being transformed. Financial sector has grown, there's the digital and the IT and telecommunication revolutions which need no retelling. And with the rise in the growth in the economy and increasing industrialization, urbanization, and the rise of an aspirational India, demand for power and for fuel and for means of transport and for rural and urban infrastructure, now this has risen. There's been lifestyle changes in what we eat, what we consume. Now, in the midst of these changes, there have been dramatic improvements in the standards of living of the majority of Indians. It's a different matter that so many of us are still poor, but there has been a change. And this transformation is being felt actually around the world. People are taking note of it. But these changes do not come easy, and they have spawned their own challenges, whether these be political or economic or technological or social or demographic. And we as a country face a lot of challenges in trying to provide an opportunity for inclusive growth and sustain this productivity growth or innovation and manage the resources and manage the environment. And towards this end, it is important that we strengthen government or governance, accountability and institutional effectiveness. Now, notwithstanding the headwinds and the risks that we face, fortunately, the world believes that India is poised to shape responses to these global challenges. And to that extent, the burden of expectations on the administration becomes even greater. And the government, the bureaucracy and the administration is expected to deliver. That's on one end. On the other, you have an growing assertiveness of civil society and the gaze of an increasingly vigilant media. And there is, of course, and very rightly so, a strong and watchful judiciary, which is good for us. Now, in this backdrop, it is desirable to reflect on how effective our governance system is in meeting these challenges, and also whether there is any mismatch between the way some of our institutions are designed and the conditions in which they are required to perform. Some structural changes and certainly changes in governance styles and methods would be called for if we are to quickly harness and manage this change efficiently and with equity. Now, what is governance? It can be talked about in several contexts, such as international or national or even local governance. The concept is old and there are several definitions. According to one, governance refers to the process of decision making and the process by which decisions are taken or not implemented. Governance reform, again, is a wide term and can span electoral reform or judicial or economic or financial, corporate or regulatory governance, as well as media reforms, strengthening of the grievance redressal machinery and like. One can also think of parliamentary and executive governance, but I propose to confine myself to administrative governance. According to a well-accepted description, which has been quoted in United Nations documents, particularly those of ESCAP, in their lexicon, and I quote, governance requires accountability, transparency, responsiveness, wider participation in making public choices, some measure of predictability in public and private institutions and markets, and is built on the rule of law and control of corruption. It depends on institutions that are effective, efficient, economical, and equitable in the provision of basic services. From the point of view of the citizens and the government, one of the key requirements is ensuring a process of quick and effective decision making and swifter implementation with simplified transactions and effective delivery. Now, the transitions and changes that have been taking place around us have thrown up several challenges, as I mentioned. Now, the most important of these challenges are those that relate to the citizens' desire that the country's development be fast and equitable, keeping the poor at the center of focus. Now, within this overall objective, there is also the challenge of ensuring, and I can name so many of them, I mean, there's food security and to this end strengthening the agricultural value chain, or bringing about a green revolution. Dr. M. Swaminathan calls for the need for an evergreen revolution. Now, there is a need to address rural indebtedness, the issues of health coverage, providing quality education, affordable housing, clean drinking water and sanitation, making available urban amenities in rural areas, improving civic amenities in towns and cities, and something to which the residents of Pune are, of course, totally alive. And now also the development of smarter cities, construction of roads, highways, development of ports, strengthening of power discoms, increasing coal and mine production, cleaning rivers, revitalizing public sector units, skilling a large workforce. Now we have 1 million people, actually more than 1 million people, who are joining the workforce every month. And this trend is likely to continue for the next 20 years at least. So we need to improve, I mentioned about ease of doing business, making India a manufacturing hub, strengthening the financial and banking sectors, ensuring financial inclusion, reducing subsidies. And what about reducing social tensions, tackling left-wing extremism, curbing ethnic conflicts, securing our borders and our seas. So the list could go on. Now both the central government and the state governments are trying to address these issues. And the other things that happen along the way, in a recent development, the states now are about to feel financially more empowered now that the recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission for the period 2015-16 to 19-20. Now they have come and they have recommended substantial enhancement in the share of the states in the centre's divisible pool of resources from the current 38% to 42%. They have accepted, the government has accepted this. Now this is the biggest ever increase in vertical tax devolution that we have seen in India, and it's been estimated that the increase because of these Finance Commission recommended transfers in 15-16 over 14-15 will be about a little over 2 lakh crore rupees. On a net terms, it will be a little about 1.5 lakh crore rupees. Now this is a tectonic shift, and it will have a bearing on the manner in which the centre and the states relate to each other. And it imposes on the states an urgent need to improve the efficiency of expenditure, to focus on utilization, on targets and on outcome, on delivery of services, and more particularly on benchmarking of social sector expenditure, while at the same time trying to ensure fiscal consolidation. Then there is the proposed introduction of the GST. Now when the new tax structure actually takes place, it will impact on the role, among other things, on the role and the manner, particularly in which the central excise and the customs services operate in their operations and the role of their officers and officials. And it may have a direct, indirect impact on the income tax side also. So again, it throws up, among other things, it throws up governance issues. Now if economic reforms have to gather mass and speed, now it is imperative that we address some of these fundamental issues of governance. But I think you can't, I wouldn't like to treat it as discrete events or discrete issues, because governance is mostly about an ecosystem, and from the perception, my perception as an administrator, I would really regard it as a continuum of sorts. It's a sort of journey for me and for my colleagues and others, in which the landscape gradually changes, and it's not as if sometimes there are sudden events. Many of them might be designed and some might be unforeseen. Now, if I look down and look back at that journey, you will find that many ideas have been thrown up from time to time to improve the system of governance. One recent example, and this is something not new again, and it's been talked about from time to time, that's the idea of merge and downsizing of ministries. Now, this is something which the present government actually has tried when the ministries were, portfolios were allocated and the ministries were organized. Other measures, again, on which the current government is also engaged is about simplification of forms and procedures, and we're trying to do away, we actually done away with affidavits, and so we want self-certification. Why should somebody have to go and get some gazetted officer or such like to attest forms? And there have been attempts, but these are most sporadic, at privatization or agencyfication of some aspects of governance. The Second Administrative Reforms Commission, they came up with a host of recommendations, many of which are being implemented. One major development, a change that I noticed in the so-called journey of about governance is the perceptible transition from patronage-based governance to a rights-based one. And numerous laws have been enacted, and some more are on the anvil, to assure these rights. And along the way, the bureaucracy has also become more accountable,
So we would like to think at least. And government systems are in the process of becoming more transparent. Maybe not transparent enough. I don't say that we've achieved the level of transparency that should be there. And many of these developments maybe have been forced upon the bureaucracy of the government. And many of the changes have come about primarily because of, in recent times at least, because of the advantage of information technology. Because for the mass of our citizens, the most transformative aspect of change that can take place, or what government can offer, is speed. And this has been feasible because of IT. So we have a number of mission mode projects coming up under the National E-Governance Program, the NEGP, and many of them are in the state sector, and trying to streamline many back-to-back processes, creating citizen-centric systems and devices. You have the unique UIDI, the identification project. This deserves a special mention. To get that together with the direct benefits transfer, the DBT. Now this is again going to be transformative because, for instance, in the transfer of benefits subsidy for cooking gas cylinders, now this is perhaps the world's largest sort of subsidy transfer system being operated. Then there's the Jan Dhan Yojana, in which virtually every household in the country today has a bank account. Now this sort of financial inclusion on this scale is unprecedented in the developing world, and this effort was bound to yield multiple advantages, many of which we haven't even thought of at the moment. There's a silent revolution going on in the digitization of post offices, which most people don't know about. So gradually, there could be other examples, and gradually we are becoming more of an empowered society. It might sound a grand term, but we are moving in that direction. And we are not can't say that India is a knowledge economy, yes, but we should move towards that direction. Leaning towards crowdsourcing is now becoming, it's something that's, I won't say popular, but started to be used. And in fact, the logo for the Swachhta Abhiyan, where you have Gandhiji's spectacles as a logo, you will see that in a lot of government correspondence also. But that logo was picked up through crowdsourcing. Numerous other e-platform initiatives which I don't wish to go to just now. So you have changes taking place elsewhere, for instance, the recently concluded coal auctions or the telecom spectrum auctions or mines auctions, again trying to rely on increasing transparency and use of IT in conducting these auctions. So with this, service delivery is in the process of improving. Again, I am careful with my words. I'm not saying it's improved or it's reached its desirable level of efficiency, but it's in the process of being. You have the system of maintaining or updating land records, which in various states, it began with Bhumi in Karnataka. All of the states have now they've tried to catch up, and you have the system or issuing of licenses, passports, even building roads and using tolling methods. Now, all of this is seeing a certain change. The PPP model itself being successful. There was a certain troubled relationship with PPPs for some time, but now it's become more successful. And but there are areas where still nothing much is, you rightly say, has happened, and accounting or budgeting, where progress has been patchy. Now, a lot of these changes come about because of public pressure or because of the example set by the private sector, and the push comes from outside the government system, or maybe from an external aid agency, or from the World Bank or some multilateral agency, or success stories of some other countries. And sometimes the innovation, the change can be totally home invented, emerging from experience, or maybe sometimes forced by circumstances. Now, I'd like to very briefly just mention two or three, a couple of illustrations from my own experience. And one is that it's almost right to say now that what gets measured gets done or gets managed. Now, a recent example of this was the performance management system that was started in the central government. And, this is colloquially known as the results framework document, RFD system. Now, the process involves the preparation of a results framework document by each department, in which the department highlights their objectives and their priorities and their targets for the financial year. And some states have also begun to adopt this now. It's too popular. In fact, in some countries surrounding India, our neighboring countries in SAARC have expressed an interest in it, Sri Lanka, for instance, Bhutan. Now, it's still in the process of getting ingrained in our work culture, but it's a very promising and sound concept. Now, another example of innovative governance is that of the so-called Project Monitoring Group, or PMG. Now, this was set up again out of necessity because it was found that there are a large number of infrastructure projects in the country, whether private or public sector, which were stranded or stalled because of lack of clearances. And traditional methods of trying to solve this impasse was somehow not succeeding, and the projects remained stalled. And then it was decided to set up a group which we christened it the Project Management Group, or the Project Monitoring Group, called PMG. And I think it was felt that getting these projects going was critical to the success of this initiative, and it wouldn't be allowed to fail. And that's why it was decided to locate it in the Cabinet Secretariat. So if you view it from a traditional bureaucratic lens, the methodology the group has adopted is well, I won't say unconventional, but different from the way the routine file and correspondence, because here the officers, senior officers, they get together, sit across the table, thrash it out there and then, and put up the results, the minutes of the meeting before they disperse. It's on the net. So whichever industry or project whose project is stalled and it's been taken up for consideration, they can know immediately what's been the decision. And a large number of projects that had been stalled, they have crossed the hump, and it's proved successful, and many states have now started applying the same process. So nothing very great, it's actually a simple, good old sitting across the table and solving it, but then the way the bureaucracy normally tends to function, it was a departure from that. And close coordination in a different politics, I find that always, again an old remedy, but it always yields good results. And I saw that myself when we tackled in the preparation for the aftermath of or during, for instance, cyclones, when Cyclone Palin came and then Cyclone Hudhud, and where we would meet with up to 16 agencies. I would meet sometimes twice a day and sometimes late in the night, but just to ensure that everything was in place before the cyclone came, and then during and after. And so again, examples of where I think it was a matter of some satisfaction that we got before. There have been changes in institutional structures too. The most striking of these has been the winding down or winding up, I would say, of the Planning Commission, and in its place the setting up of the Niti Aayog. Now this institution is intended to nurture open, transparent, accountable and purposeful style, as it says in its resolution, of governance. And it'll try to facilitate and empower these critical elements of good governance, make it people-centric or participative or collaborative. So, all this is intended to improve the whole ecosystem. But I think from all of this, if one thing were to stand out, I would say that it is the ability to deliver services and to improve on that ability. And in so process, we can't afford to have a trade-off between efficiency and equity. We keep equity in mind. But there are so many areas where we haven't succeeded. At least in large parts of India, we haven't succeeded. Now, just elaborate a bit on urban governance. Now, the census of 2011, and I have some figures here, they put the urban population of India at 37.7 crore. Now, this constitutes 31% of the total population of the country. And while the growth rate of the rural population was 12%, that of the urban population was 32% in the decade ending 2011. And the number of statutory towns increased from about 3,800 to 4,040, 41. And census towns from 1362 to 3892. And And this is in a scenario where a large number of households don't have toilets and or a source of drinking water. 19% don't have a source of drinking water outside their house, and no bathing facility, and So we obviously need a scientific approach to manage our urban affairs, and it cannot be business as usual. Now, we require an effective strategy to meet a reasonable proportion of expenditure on municipal services through levies and taxes and rates and user charges. And we try to encourage they should increase the tax base and the efficiency of tax collection. And many states are using IT tools for this now. But Pune is an exception, but I think in most urban local bodies there's still a problem. One is, of course, the lack of will on the part of the urban local bodies to take tough decisions for reform. The Urban Renewal Mission, the JNNURM, was started with great hopes that it would be a reform measure. Unfortunately, there wasn't much reform that came out, because the problem was that it started operating like a normal scheme. So the reform bit was not achieved. So I think for this, again, there's a learning there, because apart from trying to push the reform bit, you have to benchmark services. And it's not just a reporting mechanism, you must have a reporting mechanism, and you benchmark it for cross-city or cross-state or cross-country comparison, and it becomes a tool for undertaking an objective performance analysis by different agencies, by local bodies, whoever wishes to study or to improve on their performance. And linked to this in urban management is the absence of an efficient cadre of officials who are well versed in municipal management. Now, we are conscious of the fact that there is a need to train and bring about such bureaucrats and engineers and tax people who are and they should have compulsory postings, not just train them earlier in their career to these corporations. I was mentioning to the Chief Secretary earlier in the day that we have taken a decision, has been taken that as far as IAS officers are concerned, typically they regard their career profile in the earlier first few years to move from the academy in Missouri to being a sub-divisional officer, and then going to Zilla Parishad, and then becoming a collector in 4, 5, 6 years. But we propose to now bring them to send them compulsorily to a posting in a municipal corporation somewhere, so that they can cut their teeth in municipal governance, and they should know what it is. So we need to train our people, we need to empower the city administrations and build capacity, and I think we'll also have to tap into the expertise of the private sector for this. And so this will be a big challenge, but not just the private sector in terms of industry, but more important, I think what is required is to get the people, get the citizens to have ownership of the goal, what's happening. And this is something which a problem that hits us hard when we try to, for the Swachhta Abhiyan, which the Prime Minister has been very rightly emphasizing a lot on, and we're trying to spread the good word that this is something that it's a problem that we face all over India. But when we reflect on that, it's not really a hardware problem. I mean, you can't just simply solve it by saying that to make one toilet requires so many rupees and multiply it by so many crore because you require this number of toilets, and voila, you have that solution. No, it's not going to work that way. It's a software problem, it's a mindset problem, and you require champions in society, in civil society. You want those champions to lead the charge, to change the mindset. So until that is done, it will be money not well spent. Same problem we are trying to address in this campaign for cleaning up the Ganga. Now, river cleaning, again, we had GAP 1, we had the Ganga Action Plan 1, we had Ganga Action Plan 2. A lot of money was spent, but the results were suboptimal. And I think we're trying to get the learnings from that experience and see that this time we don't repeat those mistakes. Now, I spent so much time on urban governance, but I think an enlightened audience like we have here today, I don't think really would have required this elaboration on municipal issues, because Pune is an example, a good example of all that a good urban center should stand for. And you have a relatively good, as far as the municipal and urban administration is concerned, you have a relatively good financial performance, and you're able to make those investments. You have examples of public-private partnerships and local government initiatives for local governments. Now, Pune residents may not be fully satisfied with the services that they have in this beautiful city of yours, but so many of you would know that other cities have a lot of catching up to do. And one of the reasons for this, I think, is the enlightened nature of the citizens, the concerned citizens here. And so this again, I think, brings me back to that, to the importance of ownership and being involved. Now, in reflecting on governance, I think on these issues, attention needs to be given to the structure of the government and its machinery. Now, we've realized over the years that conventional hierarchies don't seem to be working in many instances, and actually that is the reason why we have to set up these so-called missions and mission directorates and special purpose vehicles, and we have these SEZs and, for industrial corridors, and for some things which are very, very critical and important, we set up a separate mission. Now that is, or maybe you have a different governance structure for the metro, Delhi Metro for instance, different corporate structure. Now this is tacit acknowledgement of the fact that we have to come up with something innovative in terms of structure. Now, it's not that I'm saying something which others in government don't know, that you're not aware of, but I think the central government and the state governments, they have, I think they acknowledge some of the genuine criticisms and the challenges, and they're working to resolve them. So as I mentioned earlier, there are numerous examples of good work that's been done. And I think the realization is there, the effort is there to have greater focus on strategic outcomes and to have a less prescriptive approach and a stronger emphasis on collaboration between services and across sectors. But we have to change the mindsets along the way, and one of the ways to do that is training, and that is again something which I was very happy to learn here from the Chief Secretary and from Mr. Limay, that Yashada has been adopting innovative ways of trying to not only raise resources but to enlarge its imprint on training and in training. Because in the central government we have a tough task for us, because there are about 3.6 million, 36 lakh employees of the central government, and of which about 1 lakh, in fact short of that actually, 96,000 are in Group A, but the rest are mostly in Group B and Group C. And we are able to cater to in Group B and C, we are able to cater to the training needs of 19,000, which is far short of the total number. And until you train, you can't really expect that you'll be able to. So we are at it. We have to do it, and we realize it's a big task, but we want to do it systematically, and we're going to do it. And we, of course, at the senior level, we send people for training, different institutes, different universities, send some even abroad, much to the dislike of expenditure secretaries and finance secretaries, because they take a dim view of this practice, spending money. But I think train we must. Now, in the context of administrative governance, I think I will be failing if I don't refer to the raging debate on the style of governance in the Indian bureaucracy. Now, somehow I think it's a culture thing also. We recognize individuals and don't recognize teams, whether in the bureaucracy or even outside in society. So, certainly we have to emulate the culture of having teams, and some of the foreign universities, leading universities, they virtually change your genome to ensure that you have a collaborative sort of approach. And this time, we celebrate the Civil Services Day every year, on the 21st of April. That was the day when Sardar Patel first addressed probationers in the Metcalfe House. And this time it's going to be different, in the sense that instead of a one-day function where we did some serious discussions and the like, we are going to make it 2 days and involve all the states also. It won't be a Delhi-centric affair. Every state capital is going to do it, and there hopefully the chief ministers also will take an interest, and they will reflect, they will debate, discuss, cogitate, and come out with some recommendations on certain, there's a set of subjects on which they will be urged to, work on those and come up with some innovative solutions and ideas, and that will be shared on the second day with the Honorable Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister would in fact, he would interact with the states, he would listen to them and do that. In fact, it reminds me, there's another innovation there. Just 3 days ago, Chief Secretary was there, the Prime Minister had a direct videocast interaction with Chief Secretaries of all the states on some selected infrastructure projects. Now this was a new, and I think it's again aroused a lot of interest in the states, and I think they feel, the feedback I've got is that certainly they feel encouraged that they are able to access intervention and help from Delhi when it's required. So, but all said and done, I think ultimately these are new situations, new ways of doing things. But that's not enough. We have to, bureaucracies generally have to adapt to new situations. And it's often said that while the strong institutional memory of bureaucracy, equips it to explain why an idea will not work, any government, not just Indian government, any government machinery is poor at embracing innovation or enacting radical plans. That the civil service is never really designed for overseeing any massive welfare or development programs and so on. And again, the criticism often made, not just in India, if you study what's happened in other countries, including the developed countries, they complain that the bureaucracy is focused more on process compliance than on, performance or building competencies or in building their own human resources. Now, but yeah, we also don't want to perpetuate what is called a tick box culture, where we just compliance with the rules replaces responsible judgment and individual discretion. Now, this is particularly important because decision making, and especially the context in which governments operate, state governments included, they become more complex. The issues have become more complex, and so I think to deal with this complexity, we need to think afresh, and we are thinking afresh. We are bad sorts actually. So we are trying our best to think afresh. And now, whether we have that effective governance model which is required in a technology-empowered world, we have to give up this unending, reliance on precedents, because it's confining and it's actually hostile to growth. Now, in this context of precedents, it was a remarkable coincidence because Chief Secretary in the afternoon he had just mentioned about Dean Paul Appleby, who's an American, and I had thought of that myself. In fact, I brought a quote about Appleby. Now, Dean Appleby was a distinguished American academic, and he was and also a civil servant, who had been invited by Pandit Nehru in 1952 or 53 to appraise and advise on the state of our public administration. And he submitted 2 reports. But I would like to quote a paragraph of one of the reports in which he very trenchantly, he observed, and I quote, "By reliance on excessive procedures of cross-reference," and I'm mentioning this in the context of reliance on precedents. So by reliance on excessive procedures of cross-reference, there has been built an extraordinary evasion of individual responsibility and a system where everybody is responsible for everything before anything is done. So you go around, law may also see, and finance may also see, so it goes on for a year. Now, unfortunately, it cannot honestly be said that 65 years later, this ill has been completely wiped out, but we are trying. And actually, there's a disturbing corollary, if I may say so, that not only is there excessive sharing of responsibility for action before the act, there is, too little review of what has actually happened after the act. So, I try to keep getting it also that these review functions, high-level functions, should be performed in a high-level way, and we can't have some procedure which is given to smallness or slowness. That will not help us. Now, one more quote. This is procedure, but actually procedure by itself is not all evil. It's been said that the history of American freedom is the history of procedure. Now, in this context, the other quote that I have is Bailey's paradox of procedure. Now, that's the same procedures that are the friends of deliberation, order, and equity are also at times the enemies of progress and dispatch. In addition, some procedures are simply inept in spite of the goodwill in their creation. In other words, technique can triumph over reason. Now, Bailey argues that the public servant who cannot recognize the paradoxes of procedures will be trapped by them. But the paradox is that he who deviates frequently is subversive, and he who never deviates at all is lost. And he who tinkers with procedures without an understanding of the substantive consequences is foolish. So, but anyway, routine compliance is one thing, but there are larger issues, and we need to take this into account when any policy is made, and we are trying to make it into account to work out a strategy. Now, strategy is the interface between policy and action. And it's fundamental large scaling up. And why I say scaling up? Because in so many things now, we need to scale up, especially in our country. And so, you can't really break up something into small bits, because otherwise it will be, lost in translation, so to speak. And so we need strategy, we need people to, we need jousting with each other, and we need people to think, and we need think tanks. And I was very happy, I knew it, but it was only confirmed when Dr. Kelkar mentioned earlier this evening that there are several think tanks in Pune. And so actually there is a paucity of independent inputs for policy making. So it could be anything, security, or foreign policy, or development issues. So, and we need to bring a brand of younger generation, into it. But they come up with new ideas, and they have the professional qualifications these days. So they can look at various dimensions of the problem, and and that would, I think the government would welcome that sort of input. And we'll definitely try to have a system where we can welcome such inputs. So that would make our policy making, government's policy making, whether at state level or the central level, more robust. So we require that a candid review and a candid view. So, but again, there should be more debate on this, and forums like these are ideally suited to coming up with more ideas on that. We are beginning to place greater reliance on use of data and information which goes into making of policy and even programs. And this augurs well, because we have to further develop our capabilities for data use and for data sharing and for data storage and also data privacy. So this is something which we have to do. We have to build in more internal quality assurance. We have to, there's so many scattered ideas that I have, and I'm trying to look at the watch also. We need to exit things. Nature destructs. We don't destruct. We don't kill anything at all. You can't kill a business in India once it's born. So again, I think the finance minister's budget speech sometimes he dwelt on. He referred to the need for allowing business to exit. And, this is something that we have to do. So, talking of new ideas, the Prime Minister this time asked all secretaries to government to go back to their place of first posting, just to see how things have changed in the last 30, 35 years, 40 years. And it was quite an eye-opener. I myself went to Moradabad, where I had my first posting. I hadn't visited the place for 40 years. And There are a lot of things that changed and some things that not changed. That in itself was an education. But it gave me an insight into a new development which has taken place, which is e-waste. I realized that Muradabad is a place where computers come to die. By the truckloads from all over India, from as far as Trichy. Trucks are coming there, loaded with keyboards and whatever have you. And they are being dismantled, they are being disposed of and melted and smelted and to get the precious metals out of them in an unorganized, unscientific, crude, unhealthy manner, totally unregulated. Now this is a challenge, again a challenge that we have, and we'll have to do something. Some towns are doing it. I'm told Pune also has some, I don't know the details, but Baroda for instance has some system. But considering that the total imports of electronic hardware, the import bill for electronic hardware in the country is going to exceed the oil import bill for India in the year 2020, just 5 years away. You can imagine the gravity of the problem that we are going to be up against. So this is again something which civil society has to join hands with scientific agencies, with government agencies, with regulatory agencies, and we have to find a solution. I was very happy to learn that this is an area in which thinkers and enlightened citizens in Pune are engaged in, and there's some discussion going on and thinking going on of that. I would be happy to be kept abreast of any new ideas which might emerge, and I don't think we have a final solution to this. We're still grappling with the problem, but certainly this is something that needs to be addressed. So I don't know, I've covered a number of issues, some of them disjointed, about process and culture and need for more accountability and I think within the government system also, unless we have trust, trust within government, trust between government and society, trust between government and central and state governments, we won't get optimum results. The whole thing, in fact, the whole governance system itself, if you look at it, is really built on trust. We unfortunately inherited a system from the British which was not built on trust. And we need to, see that it is, then I think we'll be able to make some progress. Now, as I have mentioned in between a couple of times, there's a lot that the government is doing and doing right, and there's a lot that it hasn't done or it needs to do. But I think I'll conclude on the note that there is need to, encourage and perk up the morale of the civil service. I have been interacting with young officers and not so young officers in Pune today, and I'm heartened to see their awareness and their keenness to learn and their sense of commitment. And Pune is not unique in this, in the sense that, but it's only a confident civil service that can be effective in coping with the demands of these times and the expectations that we have from a rising India. And I'm hopeful that the traditional core values of the services will, they will drive the pride and they will drive the professionalism across the civil service. And let me assure you that members of the civil service, members of the bureaucracy, they want to make sure that they can do all that they can, all that's in their power to earn and to retain the public confidence and public trust, in their values and standards. Now, I said all this and I spoke of governance and changing time because these are issues which dominate my, work, and I thought it would be of interest, of some interest, not only because of the very enlightened nature of Shri Deshmukh and how able an administrator he was, but also because of the interest which a diversified and enlightened audience like you, which are present here this evening, would appreciate. I have endeavored to paint no more than a fragment of large canvas, and good quick results may not be forthcoming immediately in many areas. They will in some might take a little time, but then in a democracy, I think those things are more achievable, more likely to succeed, which are debated upon by the constituents who deserve. And so Janvani and Dr. Kelkar and Yashada, they deserve every compliment for providing this forum for articulation and for debate. I hope that this discussion today will provide some material for further reflection and for thinking on this vital subject. And I'd like to thank all of you, and particularly Dr. Kelkar, for so graciously having me in your midst. I feel really the richer for having come here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your enlightening and insightful invocation on the topic, Governance in Times of Change. I once again request Dr. Kelkar to deliver the word of thanks.
I have now a very, very pleasant task and duty to thank our distinguished speaker on behalf of Yashada, Janavali, the distinguished audience in this room, and more than 100 students are sitting in the basement listening to the lecture on their behalf. I want to all us most grateful to you for your illuminating reflections and thoughts on this complex issue of governance and reforms. And you effortlessly took us to the different aspects of governance and government reforms. And the students, more than hundreds of students are here. I think your lecture would have inspired many of them to redouble their efforts to join civil services. Because you have really given a new shining light on what civil service can do. I also want to thank the press and all my younger colleagues from Janavani and Yashada who made this event possible. Everything went with clockwork precision, and I'm really grateful to you all. And finally, I want to thank each one of you for coming this evening, in spite of being Saturday evening, and spending this time with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, with this we come to an end of the 4th annual Shri Deshmukh Memorial Lecture. Thank you so much for attending this event and making it a success.